So the goal within the nitrogen cycle is figuring out those 4 questions. Where is it stored? How does it get into plants? How does it get into animals? And how does it go back? All right, so where is nitrogen stored? In the atmosphere, in the air, right? 78% of our air is nitrogen. So how do we get it into a form that's usable? And that starts with ammonia. We can't just jump start to any of these other 3 that I just showed you, right? We can't just jump to ammonia, nitrite, or nitrate. We have to start with ammonia. So how do we get it into ammonia? That's that big question. There's a couple big key words I want y'all to focus on and learn. You have nitrification, nitrogen fixation with an X, nitrification, ammonification, denitrification. We're going to look at these individually, and then something called assimilation. What do you think that this little picture here on this screen is supposed to be representative of? These little circular dots here that I'm pointing to? What?
Organisms or like.
What kind of organism?
Plankton.
Bacteria. Right? It's magical, mystical species, right? It's like single cell, very small, simple species of bacteria that are able to eat certain things and literally decompose and create something else out of what they've eaten, right? There's more bacteria in your mouth right now than there are people on the planet. Say you just used a bunch of mouthwash, right? Doesn't matter what kind of mouthwash you use, that mouthwash isn't going to kill all the bacteria in your mouth, even if you just brushed your teeth, compared to the people on the planet. There's so much of that inside of us. Even inside of our stomach, when we take those antibiotics, you're trying to get rid of whatever bad bacteria or infection that you've got going on. That may kill all of your bacteria, right? A lot of your gut flora and fauna, but you still, like, you're going to eat yogurt. And in yogurt, you have all those nice enzymes that are helping you, if you do milk, right? That are helping replenish some of that bacteria, the good and not really the bad, but the good bacteria you lost. So what we're going to do in our ecosystem is we have to grow the bacteria that's going to take in the ammonia and create nitrite. We're going to grow another bacteria and harvest that bacteria that is going to eat the nitrite and create nitrate. And nitrate is great. Like Tony the Tiger? I want y'all to get that. Nitrate is great, right? Okay.
So like, where's the modification on that?
Ammonification?
Yeah, where is that?
Down here, the death and decomposition, right? And that death and decomposition is going to be creating ammonia again.
Oh, okay.
It's not working. Okay, so where's all this nitrogen at, right? Basic things I want you to cover. We already talked about it. 78% of the nitrogen on our planet is in the atmosphere. So where is it stored? It's in the air, right? How does it get into plants and animals is our next step. Atmospheric nitrogen is dinitrogen. So I want you to know that the majority of it's in the air, 78%. What's urea? What? Urea. Comes out your urethra.
Yeah.
Urea. What's it sound like? Pee, urine, right? You are right, yeah. So inside urine, right? Pee, which is when y'all think of ammonia or you see this ammonia stuff, I was hoping somebody was going to say cat pee.
It's pee. Oh.
You know that smell when, like, say you walk into an area and somebody hasn't changed out that litter box and it has way too much ammonia in it. You're like, whoa. That smell is ammonia, right? It's urea in like high quantities. Well, if you look at this.
It's smelling cat pee. Is something wrong with my nose?
No, that doesn't smell like lemon. Like, and you're wearing a mask, so it shows your mask is working. I don't think you think cat pee smells. We're struggling over here with glasses. Okay, so looking at the formula makeup of urea, right? You can see that NH2, all it needs is another hydrogen ion and to split off some oxygen and carbons to create that pure ammonia form, right? If you add, I want y'all to know these. I'm going to be using these terms interchangeably as y'all are, as we're working through nitrogen cycle. I'm going to ask you these nitrogen cycles. I'm going to say this a lot, but I'm going to ask you these nitrogen cycles on every single test and quiz moving forward. Maybe not on every Kahoot, but on a lot of them, right? And it's going to be almost that same question. So it's going to be really important that y'all, one, understand this, but the why factor on why I want you to know this is because this is what's happening in your ecosystems. And so if you don't fully understand what's happening in your ecosystems, then why are you creating one, right? So it's going to be really important to get that. Ammonia and ammonium, I won't really switch these up too much, but you're probably going to just see ammonia. Online Zoomers, can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Better than yesterday?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so then you have nitrite, right? So you have a bacteria, it's called Nitrosomonas, eats the ammonia, poops out nitrite. Then you have a nitrobacter bacteria, which we'll get into those. Nitrobacter bacteria eats the nitrite and poops out the nitrate. Ammonia nitrite to nitrate was what we call nitrification. And I'm going fast and I'm throwing out all these terms just so you can start to hear them, right? Because this is the first time we're going to get it. Atmospheric nitrogen or dinitrogen, N2, and then organic nitrogen is N.
Which one comes out of diesel? Or is it just straight? I think it's just straight nitrogen. Like diesel trucks, when they burn fuel. I thought it was just.
I don't know. Want to Google it and let us know? No one's ever asked me that. Oh, nor have I looked into it. But you got carbon in there for sure.
That's why it's like such a debatable thing between what's better, diesel or gas, because
I knew it's fossil fuels are that it releases are different, but I don't know what the chemical makeup is.
it's like gas releases carbon
Look it up.
monoxide. And then
Okay. So, the natural reserves. I don't need y'all to fully understand and know this stuff. Just get those concepts in your brain. So I said this at the very beginning. I've said this a couple of times now, that when we go through these biogeochemical cycles or some of these concepts on Earth, I want you to take yourself away from Earth. So you're thinking like big picture. And then I want you to like Google Maps it, like Google Earth zooming in, and then putting yourself on the planet. So if you're gonna kind of take that big picture and you step away because you're on Luna or you're on Mars, and you're gonna be looking at the Earth, right? Thinking about it in a whole, the majority of nitrogen we can see is stuck in the air, in our atmosphere, and it doesn't actively cycle, which means it's stuck there until something pulls it away from it. But in our oceans and on our land, the thing I want you to see here is that there's so much of it in our ocean versus on land. Like there's a lot, the most of it's in the ocean, or I'm sorry, the most of it's in our atmosphere, but there's some big numbers here in our oceans. And so that's why it's so important for us to be able to know and learn the nitrogen cycle, because we can learn about our ecosystems that way. Versus what's on land, is there's just not that much, and it's slowly cycling, and it's not a fast cycle. So, why is nitrogen so important? Because it's the building blocks of life. I gave this last time, like Thanos, if he snapped his fingers and he took away all the nitrogen, just like he took away all the phosphorus, we're all gonna die. There's not gonna be any living organism that's gonna be able to survive. So it's crucial to our understanding that it's important to know that these biogeochemical cycles are literally our building blocks of all life, right? DNA, RNA, proteins, amino acids, right? None of those can really survive. They grow, or we can't really build on ourselves, build muscles, things like that, build new cells without those. So my question to you is, how do you think, with the limited knowledge that we've gone over, and we've covered this already, how do we get atmospheric nitrogen into a usable form? Into ammonia. How do we get N2 into NH3, which is ammonia? How do we get it? You got nitrogen gas flowing all around this little bottle here that we can't see. Bacteria, the magical and glorious thing that we like to call bacteria, which I think is just fascinating, right? Bacteria does it, and that's a trend, right? It's a big trend that we're going to see through this. You're only going to need to know 2 of those. So when I say nitrogen cycle, it's not like the water cycle where it's a true cycle, it never stops. There are stoppages in the nitrogen cycle. Bear with me, I'm not big on doing PowerPoints. This is not how I normally teach, but we got to get through this information. So just, you can do it, right? Y'all can do it. So when we're looking at the nitrogen cycle, we're going to talk nitrogen fixation with an X, ammonification, nitrification, denitrification, and assimilation. Assimilation, if you want to write that down now, is step 2. So we're talking, how does it go? Where is it stored? How does it get into plants? How it gets into plants is nitrogen fixation and ammonification. And then how does it go from plants to animals is assimilation. So that just means what, you think, on land? Land animals. How do they get it? They eat it. And that's the term for assimilation. Pretty simple. I think it's in the PowerPoint. I think I put it in there. But earlier this morning, somehow I like reformatted the slides and it knocked off. But the 4 processes we're going to focus on in aquatic science is nitrogen fixation, ammonification, nitrification, and denitrification. So let's get started. Nitrogen fixation with an X, right? Nitrogen fixation. You've got all this amazing bacteria, right? You have this free-living bacteria, which we're going to call aerobic and anaerobic. What is aerobic bacteria? It's in the air, right? It needs oxygen. What about anaerobic? Don't need oxygen. So if you're a track runner, right, and you're like cruising along, you're cool, you're able to breathe, you can talk, that's aerobic, right? Doing like jumping jacks, whatever. But when you go breathless, that's anaerobic. And we also call that anoxic. A-N-O-X-I-C. We can build these anoxic environments in our fish tanks if we don't have anything. Hi. Oh, the door is always open. You have stolen your chips and breakfast at McDonald's.
What? Break things? You watch the remix? The second remix? Yeah. What's the second one? Oh, yeah, the second one. I thought that was the first one.
Thank you.
So I'm like, oh, is that us?
What? Yeah, those like soft ones. Okay, I'll have to cut that time lapse out of here. All right, so anoxic environment. We're talking an environment that has no oxygen, right? Can be like toxic. There's the X, right? This is going to create toxic gases in our ecosystem, and then we've got lagoons, which if you see me try to draw a plant with some like weird things coming out of the roots, that's because these lagoons. What's a lagoon? A bean is a lagoon, and a peanut. That's a lagoon too, right? When you grow these beans around like peach trees, for example, those lagoons are going to feed those peach trees all this nitrogen. So they're pretty important.
Learned that from the office. No, there's like Dwight's magical lagoons.
All right, and then next we've got ways that we also are going to fix. So we've talked about the bacteria on the lagoon, which this is an example of that, and this is those little shoots that I was talking about that I drew. So this is in Dwight's magical lagoons, right? Maybe he's got some extra long shoots out of the roots, I don't know. But then there's also a process of lightning. So if you wanted to make your car go faster, what are you going to add in that as a little booster?
Nitrous.
Nitric oxide. This is nitric oxide, right? So lightning creates nitric oxide, right? And then that helps kind of get that atmospheric nitrogen into a usable form.
Thought about doing it.
What?
I said, I thought about doing it tons of times.
So we got bacteria from like plants, legumes, and their roots, and then you've got lightning. So those are the two big factors there. Something I didn't mention before is inside Canvas today. Go back into Canvas. Go back into Canvas, and I want you to open up the activity that's there today, and you're going to see that it's a big word bank. So let's go do that real quick. Whoopsies, forgot about that.
Oh, no.
So in order for y'all to practice what I want y'all to work on, this is what we've done in the past. So once we finish today's PowerPoint, and I meant to do this earlier, so my apologies on the timing here. But these like are key terms that I want you to really make sure that you understand. You can see that lightning strikes around here. So if you know that lightning strikes go with nitrogen fixation, and that's talking about how to get atmospheric nitrogen into a usable form, then that's what I want you to represent. So typically what we've done is we've had a whiteboard, and you're going to draw the nitrogen cycle out and then make little drawings or use these terms to be able to make your cycle make sense. So what that would look like in the pre-COVID times, right, and post-COVID times, is you have a bag of words with like images on them, and you may have like a little cloud with lightning, and that you had to basically like say, okay, here's my body of water, and you draw a fish tank or you draw a lake, and there's lightning that happens that's you would basically label that, right? Then you would label like the fish peeing or pooping and label out the process of nitrification and show that process moving through. And so what I want y'all to do is I want you to have these keywords up on your screen or somewhere. That way you can reference back to them and kind of figure out, okay, that's an important term. I need to know that as you're moving forward with this activity. Just to kind of give you an overview of what I want from y'all. That way it'll help us all kind of learn and make sure that we're covering all of our bases. So let's go back to the actual slides themselves. And that was only like, if you want to have that other slide open, you can also just follow along and do the activity that I want y'all to do a little later. That's what we're gonna do. So you've got nitrification now. So new term. So we wanna get a usable form of ammonia. That's the key, that's the goal. We gotta start somewhere, right? So we want this first column here, right, on our chart. We want ammonia. So how do we get it? Well, we're gonna look at dead stuff. So most common thing is in your fish tank, which like I've got a little box here that's representative of the fish tank, right? So representative fish tank, you're gonna create, and then, so think you're a giant. And this is a big fish tank I'm holding, right? We're imagining, and you're gonna fill it with water, right? This is pure water. What happens if you put one fish in here? It's going to swim around. It's in distilled water. There's nothing in the distilled water. So it's going to pee and excrete things, and you're going to feed it, and it's going to take this ammonia, and it's going to stay ammonia, because you need other bacteria that you have to grow in your ecosystem in order to get that ammonia away and turn it into nitrate, which is great. So we've got to follow these steps in these processes. All right, so ammonification basically turns super dead stuff or things that were living at some point into ammonia through a random just a bacteria. Got it? A pretty simple explanation there. Now we have nitrification, which is different than nitrogen fixation. Nitrification is the process that's going to take all three of these, ammonia, nitrite to nitrate, which is what you can see on your screen. This is a molecular makeup over here. So you've got NH3, that's ammonia. And then you have a bacteria that's going to convert that to nitrite. Then you get another bacteria and it's going to convert to nitrate. which is great. Right? So how is it done? Bacterial. Two forms, and these are the two I need y'all to know, nitrosomonas and nitrobacter, but we'll get to those in a little bit. You'll get those terms. You want to write them down now, that's fine. It's nitrosomonas, which is the bacteria that's going to eat ammonia and create nitrite. Then you have nitrite to nitrate, which is nitrobacter bacteria, nitrobacter bacteria. And those are the only two bacteria I need you to know. The others, I just want you to know it's some nitrogen, nitrifying bacteria. And those, both of those, nitrosomonas and nitrobacter, are nitrifying bacteria too. So, I want to talk about denitrification, right? So that's the process that converts it back, right? I'm kind of running through these, I know, right? So we can get through them and so we can start practicing. But denitrification is, so you've got this nitrate. This nitrate is going to build up in your tank. So really overall, your ammonia is going to happen. So here's your fish tank, right? And the fish are going to pee, and then you're going to create ammonia. So hopefully what you've done is you've started an ecosystem that you want to let cycling, and I'm going to put fish food in here before there's any fish. I'm going to put fish food and other things that can decay. You can go put some leaves in there from outside. And the chemist should find that all levels are 0 because it's going to be pure water. Then you're going to put all this food and the leaves that I was just talking about in the water. Then that should break down and create ammonia. Then your ammonia is going to be high. Then you're going to have the nitrosomonas bacteria come in and eat the ammonia, create nitrite. So you should see high ammonia levels. When that first bacteria comes in, sorry if you can't see that, that first bacteria comes in, these levels are going to spike, and then all of a sudden you're going to start to see them decrease because it's now going to be growing into nitrite. So that first bacteria is going to eat your ammonia, create nitrite, and then eventually you get that second bacteria, nitrobacter bacteria, to eat the nitrate to create nitrate, which is great. Right? So it's a full step process that's happening here. But too much of anything is a bad thing. Right? Did I already say that with the broccoli? No, it's my like reminder if I've said this or not. Sometimes it's hard to say the same thing over and over and make sure I've said it right. But basically, so we want our ammonia 0, nitrite 0 because they're toxic. In our trait, we want it technically to be 0, but if it starts to grow, that's okay. It can grow into maybe like right before it turns red to 40 parts per million. But if you have too much of it, then you're creating a toxic environment too. So imagine like you only ever ate broccoli. Like too much of anything is still not a good thing because then you're not getting any of the other nutrients, right? You're just overloading your system with that broccoli, and that's what can happen with that nitrate, and that's not good. So on to that topic, we have this term eutrophication. I've said this before, moving at a pace I'm probably moving right now, which is really fast, right? What is eutrophication? This is a key term I want y'all to know throughout the year. What is eutrophication? Anybody? What do you think, looking at that picture?
Excessive richness of nutrients in the lake or other bodies of water.
Woo, Dimitri, good job. So it's an over-nutrient rich.
I'm looking at this open tab on.
That's why we're here, right? Because I want you to Google and interact and things like that. So it's an over-nutrient rich body of water. When I talked about pollution in the water, I brought up this term, right? It's over-nutrient rich body of water. There's too much building blocks of life. What are the building blocks of life that I'm referring to? Chunks, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur. So this big key term here that I want you to know, eutrophication, is an over-nutrient rich body of water. Right? Very, very important bit. How does it get into water? Well, fertilizers, right? So fertilizers are are made up of nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, right? You can get carbon from the atmosphere. Sometimes there may be some carbon in there. So what happens is you get too much of that, you're going to create a massive dead zone. So I'm going to skip through some of these. I'm going to talk about this. So this is an example of eutrophication. You got all this dead animals here. Got all this dead fish. Something bad happened. What's happening here? What's happening in our nitrogen cycle here?
There's not enough nutrients.
There's not enough nutrients, but which process is this? What's happening physically? Like decomposition is happening, but all this dead stuff is turning into what? Which form of nitrogen? Ammonia, and that process is called what? So it starts with ammonification, right? So now you're going to get way too much nitrogen because you're going to have, this is an open body of water, by the way, those bacteria, nitrous amonis bacteria, nitrobacter that convert ammonia into nitrite to nitrate are everywhere. They're all around us, right? You just have to have the ammonia for them to feed and grow, and then they can replicate. So way too much ammonia, eventually going to turn into nitrate, right? The amount of ammonia levels here probably killed all the rest of the fish that could potentially survive. And then you get this like massive green algae grown waters. And the dangers here, which this is just a feedback loop in itself, where you have this algae that's going to cover all the water. Well, the plants underneath now can't grow because of the sunlight, so they're not producing oxygen anymore, so they die. And the bacteria that decompose them eat up the rest of the oxygen in the water. So that's like a double whammy of zapping all the oxygen out of the water and the fish need to breathe, right? So basically, is that a positive or negative feedback loop, by the way?
It seems negative.
It's a negative feedback loop, right? So you've got this cycle that keeps occurring. Actually, I'm sorry, it's a positive feedback loop because it's continually like adding onto each other, right? Instead of taking it away. So it depends on what you're looking at because it's a positive for that algae, that growth and that the fish dying and the things like that. So, and then we get to what are called dead zones. Anybody know what a dead zone is? No one's heard of a dead zone?
I have.
Is it just like a? Is it just like a place with like dead animals?
Yeah, exactly. So here's an example of a very big dead zone. So all these colors that are in the ocean right now, you have all these cities and farmlands. There's like, we have to look this up. Is it 23 or 32 city, states or parts of states that flow into the Mississippi? Can you look that up? Tell me when you get it. Daniel, do you remember? It's a lot, right? So it's either 23 or 32 different states, all or part that flow into the Mississippi River. So I can tell you what some of those states are, and then you can tell me what's actually flowing down those waters. But you probably already know. You're looking at Idaho, Oklahoma.
31.
31. I think it's 32. Because I think Ohio technically isn't always counted, but it's still parts of Ohio that is. So I'm going to say 32. So you got Indiana, right? All those states that are in there. Tennessee, Arkansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. What's all in these like northeastern Nebraska? What's in these? What are these places known for? Idaho.
Snowpack.
Farming, right? So farms, oils, things like that. Snow melts, right? So what happens when these there's massive pig farming out there, there's massive agricultural farms out there, and if you get a bad storm or something like that, then all that's just going to flow into the rivers that are going to eventually make its way all the way down to us, go down through our aquifers, and then out into the Gulf of Mexico. No, that's really not good because not only are you going to create these massive algae blooms, but it's also really hot. So there's a lack of oxygen. The molecules are starting to move because it's now getting warmer and warmer and warmer. You're creating this big toxic environment. Up here in my classroom, I've got this picture of the flower gardens. Whoopsies. So I've got this where are you? Right there. So if y'all can see that it's like a thriving ecosystem reef. And when Harvey happened, it actually was damaged a little bit, actually quite a bit. But what I want you to know is that if you're looking at the bottom of that picture down here, you can see how it's like really yellow. So it's really red by the coast at the Mississippi Delta, and then it kind of like fans out in terms of the amount of toxins, and then it kind of gets really light colored. Well, at that like color, that big color change, that's about 40 miles off the coast where the flower gardens are. So if you go 40 miles off the coast, if you like deep sea fishing, you'll know when those like nasty waters of the Gulf turn like clear, then there's this big shifting change, and that's going to be what you're looking at on that picture. And so that what happens is you have the Gulf Stream current that comes in, and it does this counterclockwise rotation, but it can't go into where it's really shallow, so it stays where it's really deep, just making the deeper parts deeper and the shallow parts shallow, and it doesn't actually turn any of that nutrients. Something I like to always bring up here is the flesh-eating bacteria that kind of went through Galveston, still goes through Galveston, right? Yeah. I grew up in Houston. I was in Galveston all the time. It was the thing I did on the last day of school every time I was, all 4 years of high school for me, and during high school I went there a lot. So take friends and stuff, and one of my friends, not on this trip that I was on, so this was, I think this was when I was in college, my first couple years of college. My friends went to the beach, and then he came back with the flesh-eating bacteria in his skin, and it caved in his skin on his chest, and then he hugged his girlfriend, and his girlfriend got it on her chest. So now he's got like massive, crazy scarring on his stomach where that flesh-eating bacteria was. That really messed him up. So he's fine now, but that's it.
I
So
thought that was all over the coast, though.
it was, but he got it.
Right.
Like he was in the water where it was a little more concentrated.
I was hearing about stories of that like happening all the way down with this.
Yep. And so if you don't have good water flow, that stuff's going to be a breeding ground, right? Bacteria is an amazing thing in terms of like being able to survive and become flesh eating. It's pretty wild. So here's the picture. This is the magical picture that I want y'all to be able to draw. So what I want to do now is I need y'all at home to pull up that paper list. I'm going to kind of do this on the board, and I just unplugged my charger, so I'm going to try to get this to where you can see the board a little bit more. Sorry, the last period of the day. It is screen sharing, but I'm going to draw all over it. Okay, so I'm going to write just our main 4 important ones here. So we have nitrogen fixation. Yeah, I want everybody to draw this picture by hand. And then when we're done, you can take a picture of it, picture here, or y'all at home should have your own picture too. Nitrogen fixation. You've got ammonification.
You learned about the 32 states.
32?
And 2 Canadian provinces.
Oh, that's a lot of water flow then. Nitrogen fixation, ammonification. Which province?
I don't know. They're pretty big. So
They are big. That's why I asked. Okay, so on the board I wrote nitrogen fixation, ammonification, nitrification, and denitrification. And I'm going to label them 1, 2, 3, and 4, just like in our PowerPoint. So let's figure out where nitrogen fixation is occurring on this picture. Where is it occurring? Fixation with the X. So you could think lightning. You could think that pea plant. There's a gravel. All right. Where is this happening? Other than in the image I just drew at the board. So I just drew lightning. So I'm going to label that going into, here's our fish tank, and our fish is swimming in the water. All right, just drew like a line across it. So I'm going to draw that lightning in the water, and I'm going to label that nitrification. But there's another place on this picture where nitrification is happening. Where?
What's that last word?
Denitrification is number 4. is denitrification happening? I'm sorry, number 1, where is nitrogen fixation happening? This is nitrate leaving the tank and going back to the atmosphere. Yes, it's happening in lightning. That's good. I already labeled it. You're ahead of us. So good.
Is it the fish excreting?
So fish excreting urine. Do y'all agree online that that's nitrification?
It's not. It's
What bacteria? Simonas? Nope, that's a part of a different cycle.
It's the nitrobacter.
Okay, I'm gonna wait till we figure it out. Nope. Come on, online Zoomers, help us out. Where on this picture is nitrogen fixation with an X occurring? I gave you a track example.
anaerobic bacteria.
Bingo! All right, remember, so anaerobic bacteria is anoxic. It's in an anoxic environment, which is a lot like toxic, right? So this is going to create a toxic environment that is going to feed and make ammonia. So that's another example of nitrogen fixation with an X, right? And then it's also, since we're on the topic, it's going to create this toxic gas, right? So say you open up that fish tank, right? And you're just like, oh, let me be a curious human. I'm a very curious human. And you're like, let me just smell my water. Then you're like, whoa, that's really bad. Well, you just breathed in all this toxic gas that anaerobic bacteria gave off, and that's not good. So beware of that. So this anoxic this anaerobic bacteria creates what's called red tide in the ocean. So that can come from those dead zones, which I didn't actually bring up, which I meant to. So those dead zones that are lacking oxygen, that's one of those. Red tide is an indicator of an area where there's no oxygen in the ocean, right? So it can get you warm, things like that. And that anaerobic bacteria can help create some of that toxic gases. Then you can really feel those fumes.
This makes so much sense and really reminds me of all the stupid things I've done in probably water like that.
Yep.
Especially in like creeks. And I'm like, why is there so much algae on top?
Yep. We'll get into what's growing in that algae too. All right, ammonification. So where's our ammonification, Dimitri?
There, the fish excreting.
Yeah, the fish peeing and pooping. That is a very good example of ammonification. Where else is ammonification happening?
Plant remnants.
Plant remnants. Yep, these plants are dead. So it's happening here. Where else?
Fish
Come on, Zoomers, zoom in too. What?
Fish respiration.
So there's no nitrogen in cellular respiration, but I like it. So keep going. There's another one here. Excess food, you overfeed your fish tanks, you're just increasing your nitrogen in your ammonia in your tank. So don't do that. Okay, nitrification. Zoomers only. What is nitrification? What is the process? Would you like me to stand in a lunge the whole time while you answer?
It converts ammonia into nitrite and nitrate.
Bingo! Yes, thank you. So you're going to take ammonia, and then there's this special bacteria. This is the first time it's written down on your screen, and that's spelled nitrosomonas. Nitrosomona. Nitrosomonas with an S. NAS. Bacteria. Right, that's what that is. And then the second one that's going to eat the nitrite to poop out nitrate is nitrobacter. Bacteria. And I wrote on the board because on our board it's kind of hard to see. And it might be hard to see on your screen too, so sorry about that. But the process of ammonia to nitrite to nitrate with the two bacterias is nitrification. So ammonia, nitrite, nitrate, nitrification.
Okay.
The only way that we can get ammonia to nitrite is through nitrosomonas bacteria. The only way that we can get nitrite to nitrate, which is great, is nitrobacter bacteria. Any questions?
Nitrification. Cool.
The whole thing. You can't do nitrite to nitrate. It's ammonia to nitrate. What is the chemical makeup, the molecular structure of ammonia? N. Do you remember? What is it, y'all?
Say the question again.
What is what's ammonia? The molecular structure.
NH3.
NH3. Sometimes I'll write NH4. So sorry, but those are that's ammonium. So I just add an M and an extra hydrogen. What's nitrite? NO2. What about nitrate?
NO3.
They add on each other. Super simple there. Okay, so we're done with nitrification. What about denitrification? So thank you. That was a good point, right? Natalia made a good point. So plants, this would be plant uptake. Plant or nitrogen uptake, right? So your plants and everything want this nitrate because it's great, right? It's good for them. They can take it. It's not toxic for humans, but we just want it at a normal amount. So 0 is okay, but so is like 40 to 50 parts per million, depending on your ecosystem. So you got to know what you're dealing with. Okay. What is so that still hasn't answered our question. What is denitrification?
Is it the loss of like nitrogen or like loss or removal of nitrogen?
I can't hear you. We say it again.
The loss or removal of nitrogen.
Bingo. So where's that happening in the on our slide here?
It's when it's going on nitrate.
Yeah, it's happening when this nitrate is building up, and then I drew a line so it leaves the tank. All right, so on my screen, way up top here, and on your screen, you should be able to see that this arrow, this nitrate, there's so much of it, and it can actually just like leave the tank. And what does this? Bacteria, right? Right. So that's bacteria. Yes, I do sing it. So N2, nitrogen gas is now gone from that oxygen, right? Freed. And that is the nitrogen cycle. Do you feel like you learned something today, or do you feel overwhelmed? Yeah. That's why we're going to practice it. So we've got like 7 minutes. So y'all at home, I want y'all to, while it's still fresh, this is what's key, right? While it's still fresh, I want you to take those terms, and I want you to try in the next like 7 minutes for real. Where's my exit? Where can I exit this? Hold on. I'll put it back up so you can take a picture of it. But what I want y'all to do is I want y'all to take these terms that you can see here, and I want you to try to do this yourself. Just go back to it and go from there. I've told y'all what we normally do with the whiteboard in the bag, right? Yeah? So with that thinking, if you want to like print it out and cut it, if you have the means to, if you have a printer at home, then do it. If you don't, write them on a scratch piece of paper, tear it up, and try to see if you can make it work on your paper with arrows and stuff like that. But there's ways for y'all to be able to practice this, but without practicing it, it's going to be tough. And it's going to be real tough when you come in. And next class, I'd really like it if you could share your screen and point your screen somehow to be like, if you're on your computer, then put a piece of paper on a wall or something and draw this so that I can see y'all practice, and I want to see y'all be able to go from there. If you can't turn on your screen, then I would like a video or something, right? I want to try to make sure that we can work together.
It was like you have to look
Right
at
here.
the picture.
No, like on the picture.
No, yeah, on the picture. The picture is when it's going like out of the tank or to the bacteria. Like the final
So you see this like nitrate. So the question is what about denitrification? So on this image, you have to kind of draw and create it, right? So I just pulled this image off Google Images, right? It's one of my favorite ones. And so the question is like, he's looking for sorry, these freaking cameras. Okay. So he's looking for denitrification, and that's when like nitrate literally leaves the tank. So it has to be from nitrate. You can't denitrify from nitrite or ammonia because you've got to get to nitrate before you can do that. Good question. Any other questions?
Beans are cool.
Beans are very cool. Okay, we're done here. Get that practice in pretty please. You can only be in charge of you, right? And that's all I got for you. I would take a picture of what I got here, yeah. Oh, if you drew it, then that's good too. Let me know if y'all have questions. Daniel, did you want to take any of those home? You're just gonna have something class reading?
They're really just kind of like, what's the word? Oh yeah, by the way.
Did you see the planted aquarium over there? That would be a good read.
Do we submit?
Not yet, no.
By the way,